In the forest at the end of the ravine, a rumbling thunder suddenly echoed, boom, boom, boom. It was midday, the sky was clear and cloudless, so why was there thunder? Our hearts sank. We had just barely escaped that ancient tomb, and now what mischief was this? Listening carefully again, it didn't sound quite like thunder. The sound grew closer, like the noise of some huge beast charging towards the ravine, its heavy footsteps constantly knocking down trees as it ran. It truly sounded like continuous thunder, with a few barks of dogs mixed in. Hearing the dogs bark, I realized that only 5 hunting dogs were lying on the ground. The 3 mastiffs were nowhere to be seen. Exhausted earlier, I hadn't paid attention to the dogs. Perhaps we had been gone for too long, and they had taken turns going out to hunt. What were the mastiffs chasing so noisily? Anne too listened for a moment, then laughed and said it was nothing, just the mastiffs chasing wild boars. We should go up the slope to watch the fun. We'd have boar meat to eat later. We climbed halfway up the slope and already saw large trees in the forest being knocked down repeatedly. The hunting dogs couldn't stay put either, quietly fanning out to block the boar in the mountain pass. A red pine at the head of the mountain pass snapped in half, and behind it a huge wild boar charged out. If this boar hadn't lacked a long snout, I would have almost mistaken it for a young elephant. The boar must have weighed over 500 catties, with a mane both black and long. Its tusks curved upwards on both sides of its mouth, looking like 2 daggers. These tusks symbolized its arrogant masculinity, and also proved it was the lord of this forest. Its body was fat and round, its 4 legs short and thick, its hooves kicking up as it rushed into the mountain pass like a whirlwind. Behind the boar, 3 large mastiffs pursued rhythmically, not charging in to bite and tear, not too far nor too close. 1 in front, 3 behind, all ran into Dunyan ravine. Wild boar skin, compared to rhinoceros skin, was pretty much neck and neck. With nothing to do in the forest, it would rub its massive body against pine trees, firstly to scratch an itch, and secondly to get some pine oil on itself, unafraid of mosquitoes or insects. In summer, mosquitoes in the forest were as big as sunbirds. The mountain folk had a saying, 3 mosquitoes, 1 plate of food, which was no exaggeration. Even buffalo and cattle couldn't withstand the forest mosquitoes, but only the wild boar wasn't afraid. Its skin was like a layer of iron armor. No mosquito could bite through it. Its tusks and heavy weight were the treasures that allowed the boar to rampage here, absolutely perfect in offense and defense. Tigers, bears, leopards, and clouded leopards could do nothing against it. But mastiffs, trained by hunters, had their own special tricks to deal with wild boars. A mastiff's physique was comparable to a calf's, though still much smaller than this wild boar. The 3 mastiffs intended to corner the boar deep in the ravine before dealing with it, because the dense forest made it difficult to launch an attack, and the boar was charging like a tank. In Dunyan ravine, there was an extremely thick layer of fallen leaves. The boar had not run halfway when, due to its heavy body, its 4 legs sank deep into the leaves. The 3 mastiffs surrounded it, biting here and there, gradually wearing down the boar's strength and will. The 5 remaining hunting dogs also ran over to encircle the outer perimeter. They dared not rush in to claim credit from the mastiffs, only standing by, barking loudly to show their support. The large boar, both enraged and panicked, clumsily struggled in the pile of leaves, exerting all its strength to jump up. Unexpectedly, it managed to lift all 4 legs and leap high into the air. This was the opportunity the mastiffs had long awaited. When the boar reached the highest point of its leap, the largest mastiff also sprang up like a cannonball, ramming straight into the boar. The force and angle were perfectly precise, causing the boar to flip onto its side, exposing its belly, and fall with a thud into the deep, soft layer of dry branches and rotten leaves. The 2 other mastiffs, having anticipated this moment, gave the boar no chance to right itself, pouncing on it and ferociously tearing at its belly. The belly and lower rump were the boar's only weak points. Exposing them to the enemy meant instant death, especially when its enemies were fierce and agile mastiffs, like lions. In less than 3 or 4 seconds, the boar's heart, liver, intestines, and lungs were all ripped out. The 3 of us, seeing the boar was dead, slowly descended. Tuyen Bio and I, witnessing the mastiffs' coordinated teamwork and their use of the terrain, couldn't help but want to pat their heads in praise. Smiling joyfully, we stepped forward to call them over. Unexpectedly, both the mastiffs and hunting dogs circled past the two of us, crowding around An-Tu instead. An-Tu took out dried meat to feed them. The dogs, seeing their master happy, wagged their tails furiously to curry favor. Tuyen Bio and I, left aside, could only look at each other and shake our heads, saying, "Damn it," we eagerly greeted it, and it just shoved its stinky in our faces. Tuyen Bio grumbled, "Nyat, do you remember what Lu Xuan said? He said, 'Spit on you all, you dogs who rely on power.' Dogs are like that. Dog eyes look down on people, dog faces don't recognize people. Damn it, why are we bothering with dogs?" Tuyen Bio went back to the tent to get a knife, a pickaxe, and a hunting rifle, then returned. He helped An-Tu butcher the boar. I, with the hunting rifle slung over my shoulder, led the two large dogs to the foot of the mountain to find a place to bury the two children's bodies, so they wouldn't bother us anymore. An-Tu asked, "Nyat, are you hungry? How about eating a few bites before you go?" I replied, "No thanks, good food will still be good tonight. I'll eat later. We can't wait until dark to bury the dead, that would be creepy." I had the two large dogs drag the two children's bodies, wrapped in yellow felt military jackets. I dug a hole at the head of the ravine, facing the grassland. My engineer's shovel had been lost in the tomb, and digging with a pickaxe was strenuous. It was already late afternoon when I managed to dig a hole over 1 meter deep. I was exhausted, drenched in sweat, and my stomach rumbled continuously. I looked at the hole, over 1 meter deep, and thought it should be enough. They were just children. Digging too deep wouldn't serve any purpose. Their bodies were full of mercury, so there was no need to worry about termites, rats, or bugs gnawing at them. So I lifted the two children out of their jackets, wrapped them carefully in 2 other jackets, and laid them side by side in the pit. I clasped my hands and bowed 2 times. "You two ancient little friends, I'm truly sorry you didn't live in a new society filled with the dazzling light of democratic civilization, nor received society's care. But that is fate's arrangement, you two shouldn't be too stubborn. What is destined will be, what isn't, should be forgotten. 1,000 times over, do not calculate, it's all predetermined. The dead, once buried, are at peace. If not at peace, then they are Xianxia. My resources are limited, I have no coffin for burial, nor incense or lamps to offer you. When I return, I will surely burn some paper money for you, praying that you soon reach the Western paradise and do not return to disturb us. We are very busy, what we can do for you is only this much. Those who are excessively greedy are not good children." After praying, I and the 2 dogs filled the hole with earth. A few handfuls of soil buried the 2 unfortunate children. Turning my head to look into the distance, I saw only the setting sun like blood, and a myriad of emotions stirred within me. Time was running out. An-Tu stood far away, waving for me to come back. I led the dogs back to our campsite. Tuyen Bio brought a large rock to seal the ventilation hole where the pig-faced bats had flown out to attack the horses. There was roasted wild boar and also tripe soup with wood ear mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms. The scent of pine oil mixed with the smell of meat wafted over, and I couldn't resist. I leapt over, cut a piece of meat with my knife, and put it in my mouth. After eating, we drank the tea An-Tu brewed and discussed how to get back. Without pack horses for luggage, returning to Quang Quang camp would be difficult. Pots, bowls, plates, and tents couldn't be carried back. The animal skins we hunted along the way couldn't be brought either. The losses were truly too great. Finally, An-Tu came up with a plan. Let 2 dogs go ahead to deliver a message, calling the villagers to organize a team of people and horses to excavate the Kwantung Army's underground base. So many things couldn't just be abandoned. Moreover, dogs were the best guides and could lead the villagers. For now, we would find a safe place nearby to stay, wait for everyone to arrive, and then move the supplies back together. At this point, that was the only way. Tuyen Bio didn't care much about this matter. He was admiring 2 jade pieces. I immediately scolded him. "Damn it, you're useless. You've endured poverty and hardship for so long, and now you can't even wait until tomorrow morning?" Stop looking at these 2 jade pieces. You look at them 100 times a day. Aren't you afraid of wearing them down? From now on, leave them with me. Tuyanbio held the jade piece before my eyes, his expression a mix of surprise and doubt. Nyat, do you think this is the jade we took from the tomb? Look, something seems wrong with it, doesn't it? Since taking the 2 jade pieces from the tomb, I hadn't had a chance to examine them closely. Tuyanbio, surprised, handed me the jade piece. Why has its color changed again? I reached out to take the 2 jade pieces and examine them carefully. Both jade pieces were carved into the shape of a moth, with all its parts lifelike and natural. The body was adorned with decorative patterns, carving a strange ancient animal. This creature probably doesn't exist in reality. It was chubby, its body somewhat resembled a very skinny lion, yet also a hornless flood dragon with claws and a curled tail. In short, it was bizarre. Perhaps it wasn't an animal at all, but a pattern of clouds or waves. The craftsmanship of the patterns on the jade body was not as refined and meticulous as the carving of the moth itself, just a few embellishments. However, though crude, it captured the hidden spirit of ancient simplicity. Sometimes, simplicity is also a form of beauty. But damn it, it was truly strange. I remembered when we took them from the coffin, these jade pieces were deep green. But when we were in the underground base, they had turned pale yellow. And now, they were a dark yellow, changing color several times in one day. We had no idea what was going on. Could there be a type of jade that changed color in this world? We knew nothing about antiques. It seemed the only way was to return to Beijing and find Wang to enlighten us. To be honest, this tomb raiding expedition truly hadn't been very smooth. Not to mention the long, arduous journey. First, the ancient tomb in the best location in Dunyan Ravine was a general's tomb, but who would have thought the burial objects would be pitifully few? The only thing that might be valuable were these 2 jade pieces, and we almost died bringing them out. It was truly harder than climbing mountains and crossing seas, and more perilous than treading on ice at the edge of a cliff. If the appraisal results showed they weren't worth much, I might have to find a place to bash my head in and die. This taught me a lesson. A noble's ancient tomb might not necessarily contain many valuable burial objects. One must learn more about the cultural and historical background of the tomb and fully utilize knowledge of antique appraisal to have a clear direction and not work in vain. Tuyanbio, however, was very confident. He bet me that these jade pieces were worth at least 20 or 30,000 yuan, and perhaps even national treasures. In that case, we wouldn't sell them to Taiwanese or Hong Kong people, but directly donate them to the Palace Museum. If the state was generous, they might reward us 80 or 100,000 yuan, perhaps even allocate us 2 houses in Beijing, and let us wear red sashes to travel nationwide giving speeches and reports. By then we could brag as much as we wanted, and female college students in the audience, moved to tears, would rush up to give us flowers and love letters. I told him not to dream. Report achievements? We'd be lucky if we weren't forced into a brick kiln to squat. But if Tuyanbio was right and we could earn a few tens of thousands of yuan, that would be an unexpected surprise. The 2 of us had run around selling cassette tapes for 1 year, earning at most 3 or 4,000 yuan. In bad years, after living expenses, we basically earned nothing. For 2 days, I hadn't slept. After eating my fill and chatting with An Tu and Tuyanbio for a few words, I lay down and immediately fell asleep. After all, the hunting dogs were keeping watch, so there was no need to worry about wild animal attacks. I slept until dusk. In my dream, I returned to the old battlefield, misty with smoke and bullets. The battlefield sky was filled with the faces of my comrades, all very young. They were just faces without bodies, and they bled continuously, slowly floating up to the sky. I cried out on the ground, wanting to grasp them, but my limbs wouldn't obey, stiff and motionless. Nothing happened that night. The bats underground, we didn't know where they had gone. There were no traces of them anywhere. Perhaps they were frightened by the gunshots and had found a new cave to settle in. I slept straight until noon. An Tu had sent 3 hunting dogs back to deliver a letter. Each dog wore a small leather pouch around its neck, containing a note written by Tuyanbio. It clearly instructed the villagers to bring many people, horses, and tools, preferably explosives, to Dunyan Ravine to excavate the things left behind by the Kwantung army. At noon, we ate some wild boar meat. Then I led the hunting dogs away from the tent to near the ravine entrance. I chose a large wind-sheltered rock and set up a tent beneath it. This spot was on the border between the dense forest and the grassland. It would be easy for the villagers to find us. Afterward, Anne too took the dogs into the forest to look for wild vegetables. I dug a hole to bury the stove legs and set up a pot to boil water. We had brought flour, so Tuyen Bio took charge and made a meal of pork dumplings, celebrating our initial victory. Although this time had been frightening, it wasn't overly dangerous. And no matter what, the three of us were unharmed and had gained something, especially the Kwantung Army's underground base, which contained many supplies and materials that would be very useful for the villagers' lives. For this, it was worth raising a few cups. And so, we went hunting with the dogs every day for over 10 days. I felt like I was about to become a true hunter. Finally, the villagers arrived, over 40 people in total, led by the branch secretary and the accountant. The men of the village were all working in Buffalo Heart Mountain. This time it was almost entirely women, girls, and adolescent children. There weren't many horses in the village, no more than 10 in total. They heard there were many forgotten items, feared there weren't enough horses, so they brought mules and donkeys. Adding in the hunting dogs each family brought, they noisily and bustlingly entered Hak Fong Pass. Everyone wanted to get to work immediately. I told them that they had traveled through mountains and rivers, enduring much hardship, so it would be better to rest for one day and start working when they had regained their energy tomorrow morning. Moreover, we couldn't just work haphazardly. I used to be an engineering soldier, so I volunteered to be the team leader, assigning tasks to everyone. We had to apply operations research, set up a plan, and implement it step by step, not work like a disorganized rabble. The whole crowd was boisterous, excited yet amused, chatting shoulder to shoulder, drowning out my voice. No one could hear clearly. Finally, we had to ask the branch secretary to shout loudly, "Quiet! Everyone quiet now. Listen to my nephew. His words are my words and the organization's words. This time, our village is here to collect what the Japanese left behind, thanks to these two nephews and Anne too. Whatever they say, we do." I repeated again, telling everyone to set up camp and cook, rest, and eat. Afterward, I discussed with the branch secretary and the accountant. Without explosives, digging down to the underground base wasn't too difficult. We could start at the general's tomb, which was very close to the base's entrance. With just 5 people, it wouldn't take half a day to clear the collapsed tomb. But there might be wild animals in the base, a point everyone needed to be prepared for. Animals living underground were afraid of fire, so many torches were needed. One thing especially needed to be emphasized. After going down, no one was allowed to act on their own. The weapons inside were not to be taken, only essential living supplies like Japanese jackets, large-toed shoes, blankets, generators, wires, and cables should be collected as much as possible. After moving everything out, the entrance must be sealed up, and no news should be leaked. The branch secretary thumped his chest, assuring me, "Nephew, don't worry. As long as these people get their share, they'll keep their mouths shut. Besides, our village is remote, no strangers come all year long. This time, we've secretly hid it big." That night, we set up pots to cook, pitched tents, and rested. The next morning, as soon as it was light, we lit pine resin torches. Over 20 people led several mules along the path opened in the ancient tomb wall, entering the underground base. At the iron gate of the Jenna warehouse, traces of the struggle were very clear. The crimson flood dragon had been torn to shreds, and there were also the bodies of several steppe ground sloths. The dried blood was dark red, and looking at it still sent shivers down my spine. It was probably no longer dangerous here. Moreover, we brought so many torches, and pine resin torches burned for a long time and were not easily blown out by the wind. Even if there were still fierce animals in this base, they wouldn't dare to trespass when they saw the firelight. The branch secretary saw that the Japanese army's abandoned supplies were much more than his most optimistic predictions. Beaming with joy, he quickly called everyone to come and collect the goods, piling bundles of jackets, shoes, rainproof fabric, dry cells, and field meal boxes onto the backs of mules and horses, moving them out in droves. In villages deep in the mountains, the most lacking thing was industrial products. At this time, everyone competed, eagerly shouting and cheering, each person responding to the next, as if returning to the time when China carried out the Great Leap Forward. Anne, too, and I led a few people to scout on the other side of the tunnel. Looking at the map, there was an even larger warehouse there, not too difficult to find by following the map. The warehouse door was very tightly sealed. We had to use several horses to pull it open. When everyone entered, their eyes glazed over. Row after row, it was all cannons. Mountain guns, field guns, Type 91 grenade launchers, 60. Mortars, large and small pursuit guns, and piles of ammunition boxes stacked like mountains, stretching as far as the eye could see. It seemed these cannons were all prepared for mobile warfare. The entire Japanese army could be divided into 6 parts. The home army, meaning troops stationed on Japan's 4 main islands, including colonial territories like Taiwan and Korea. Then there was the army dispatched to China, the invading force on the Chinese mainland. The Southern Army, meaning troops operating in Southeast Asia and Australia, plus the Air Force, Navy, and the Kwantung Army stationed in Manchuria and Mongolia, totaling 6 major military districts. Among them, the Kwantung Army was the most favored by the emperor and the general headquarters, called the elite of the elite. The Japanese valued the 3 northeastern provinces of China even more than their own land. Strategic location, abundant produce, countless minerals in the forests, and the ability to mobilize from top to bottom, ready to attack the Chinese mainland at any time. Long ago, the famous Tanaka Memorial in Japan clearly showed their covetousness for northeast China. By the Second World War, the Tanaka idea emerged again. Rather abandon territory than lose Manchuria. From this, one could see the extent of Japan's desire for Manchuria. Therefore, the Kwantung Army's supplies and equipment ranked first among all branches of the Japanese army, rivaled only by the combined naval fleet. But the ambitions of militarism soon became a laughingstock before the wheels of history. We didn't need to be polite to the Kwantung Army. They hadn't been polite to us before. Everyone rolled up their sleeves, cheering as they piled and hauled things away. I told them to be careful with the torches, not to let them get near the ammunition boxes. If this place exploded, no one would escape. We'd all be buried alive here. Behind the pile of guns and cannons, there were many large wooden crates with red steel stamps on them. Prying them open, they were all small generators. But there was no way to carry them up. They were too heavy. Horses and donkeys basically couldn't carry them. We had to dismantle them and gradually carry them back in batches. We worked for a whole day, but had only moved a fraction of the basie's contents. The accountant quickly calculated. This time, we had hit it big. If we couldn't use everything, we could sell it for money. These things might be old, but old items still had value. At dinner, the branch secretary found me to discuss. He said that we wouldn't finish hauling everything out this way, and the few horses couldn't carry so much. Autumn was almost over. If we left a team to guard, and the rest transported goods back to the village, the mountain roads were difficult. Going back and forth would take half a month. If we didn't even make 2 trips, the whole mountain would be frozen. It would be better to seal the base entrance first, and everyone return to the village. Then, in the spring of next year, we could come back to continue hauling. I thought that made sense. It had been over 1 month since I left Beijing, and staying in the mountains indefinitely wasn't good. The product of this tomb raiding expedition was now ready for Rang Vang's intervention. So I agreed with the branch secretary's idea. Tuyen Bio and I probably couldn't return with everyone, so I asked the secretary to burn paper money for the 2 children at Hak Fong Pass next spring on my behalf. Also, he must absolutely remember not to touch the weapons in the base. The villagers couldn't use those. To be able to set off the next day, it seemed no one slept that night. We were busy packing things all night. By the time we finished, the sun had already risen. Fortunately, despite the chaos of the night, nothing untoward happened. We traveled silently, arriving back at Quang Quang Camp. The whole village was bustling like Tet, everyone calling the men working in Buffalo Heart Mountain to return. Every household made vermicelli and pork stew. The next day, Tuyen Bio and I didn't want to stay longer. We bid farewell to everyone and returned to Beijing after many days away. We got off the train and immediately rushed to Panjiayuan. Rang Vang was as crude and merchant-like as ever, yet extremely discreet. In fact, in the Panjiayuan area, he was a seasoned professional with rich experience. As soon as Rang Vang saw us, he quickly put aside his current business and eagerly asked us, "You two, why did it take so long for you to come back? I missed you two terribly." Tuyen Bio was about to take out the 2 jade pieces to show him, to see how much they were worth after all. This matter had weighed on our minds for a long time, and today we would finally know. Rang Vang quickly signaled with his eyes, telling us not to take out the goods just yet. "Let's go to Dong Tu's, shall we? That sliced lamb hotpot place from last time was good and quiet." This Panjiayuan is a mix of gold and dross, crowded with people and many eyes and ears. It's not a place to talk business. Burial objects shouldn't be revealed here. You two wait a moment, I'll finish this deal and then we'll go. The burial objects Rang Vang mentioned here was a slang term, as alluded to earlier. This word was a homonym and synonym for another burial objects, meaning items for the underworld. The character Min here didn't refer to antiques from the Ming dynasty, but specifically to funerary items. Similarly, terms like antiques and curios were actually euphemisms used to deceive others. In reality, the origin of these terms was related to tomb raiding. In the past, they were called bone goods and bone curios, all referring to relics from previous dynasties. While chatting, Rang Vang had already sold an icebox from the early Qing dynasty and a Jihong teapot in the Guanware style from the Yongzheng period. The buyer was a Westerner, accompanied by a Chinese interpreter. In truth, this kind of merchandise was nothing special, just small trinkets. We didn't know exactly how much he sold them for, but I guessed that Westerner was most likely fleeced badly. Having settled the deal, Rang Vang recounted his money. 3 days without opening shop, and today's opening is enough to eat for 3 years. These stupid Westerners, buying 2 fake items as if they were treasures. Go home and cry to your mommies. After counting the money, he turned to me and said, "Back in the Zhengzi year, when the 8 Nation Alliance entered Beijing, there was no shortage of fake goods they looted. Today, I'm acting on behalf of heaven. Anya, tell me, don't you think I'm justified?" Tuyen Bio and I now had business to ask of him, so of course, we had to agree with him. I quickly raised my thumb in praise. In the past, Hu Bayi defeated the Russian strongman in a martial arts contest. Today, Mr. Jin skillfully took ill-gotten gains from Westerners, winning glory for our homeland. Excellent foresight, truly excellent foresight. Packing our things, we went to the small restaurant where we first sat and talked. Today, Rang Vang must have earned quite a bit, and with the 2 of us flattering him, he was a bit tipsy. Sipping his wine, he sang 2 lines of Peking opera. "You Western waiter, I'm taking this iron whip to beat you, hey, ah hey, ah hey." I looked around. It wasn't mealtime, and the restaurant was deserted. Only our table in the corner had customers. The service staff were snoozing at tables, and the 2 waiters responsible for lighting the hot pot were squatting by the door, chatting. No one paid attention to the 3 of us. So I told Tuyen Bio to take out the jade for Rang Vang to appraise, and briefly recounted our recent trip to the northeast. Rang Vang examined it meticulously, occasionally bringing it to his nose to sniff, and even sticking out his tongue to lick it. Then he asked us in detail about the ancient tomb. Rang Vang said, "Regarding antique appraisal, I only know a little, just some family trade secrets. Today, I'll let you 2 gentlemen laugh at me. Appraising this kind of thing is like pulse diagnosis in traditional Chinese medicine. There are also 4 methods: inspection looking, auscultation and olfaction listening and smelling, inquiry asking, and palpation feeling. This is especially true for burial objects, because burial objects are not like ordinary antiques. Family heirlooms are usually wiped and admired, becoming smooth and polished over time. Burial objects, however, come from tomb raiding and have always been buried in ancient tombs. Ancient tombs are further divided into new tombs, old tombs, dirty tombs, wet tombs, and ancient tombs. First is inspection. One must look at the style, craftsmanship, shape, and color. Next is auscultation and olfaction. This is the most important step in appraising burial objects. In the South, some counterfeiters would soak fake items in cesspools and urine troughs to age them. The color might look old, but the smell is completely different. Much more pungent than jade stuffed into a corpse's anus. Ancient jade stuffed into a corpse's anus to prevent the release of yin energy and decomposition. Doing this makes it look old on the outside, but one sniff reveals it immediately. It can't fool a professional nose. Following that is inquiry. Where was this item found? What is its origin? The tomb raider will clearly state which tomb he raided, and then I can guess if he's telling the truth or lying, if there are any loopholes. From this, I can also judge the item's value and authenticity from another angle. Finally, it's about holding it in your hands to feel. This is a realm that can only be felt, not spoken. Countless antiques have passed through my hands, and these two hands you see are connected to my heart. A genuine antique, a treasure, regardless of its size, weight, or lightness, I can feel its weight just by touching and fondling it. This weight isn't its actual physical weight. Antiques themselves possess a spiritual quality, a certain heavy, solid feeling accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. No matter how cleverly a fake is made, it cannot replicate this feeling. Tuyen Bio said, "Brother, you've said so much and I don't understand a word. Just tell me quickly, how much are these two burial objects of ours worth?" Wang burst out laughing. Brother Fatty is getting impatient now. I talked a lot just now, but it was just good intentions, hoping you two can learn more about antique appraisal in the future. Which of the great tombs of old didn't have hundreds or thousands of burial objects? Without a little knowledge in this area, it's hard to get things done later, isn't it? Now, let me talk about these two items. I don't know their official names, so for now, let's give them a temporary name. Based on their appearance, they can be called moth-bodied Li, patterned twin Li, jades. As for their value, these antiques, there's no fixed price for them. They're not like sugar or milk, where you can say how much per caddy. The price of antiques is extremely arbitrary. As long as there's a buyer, and the buyer accepts the item, then it's worth money. Otherwise, no matter how good the item is, if no one buys it, it's not worth a penny. These two burial objects, I'll estimate their base price. Considering their inherent value, domestically they're probably worth about 40 or 50,000 yuan. Of course, overseas the price would certainly be much higher than this, but in our country right now, that's the market price. When selling, if there's a worthy buyer, a higher price could be offered, but that's hard to say. It depends on the situation at the time. Wang recounted that he once had an acquaintance who also dealt in Panjiayuan, selling various small items like tiles, figurines, arrowheads, ancient coins, seals, brushes, ink, and snuff bottles. Later, that fellow stopped dealing in those things and went to Xinjiang to sell mummies, and now he's struck it rich. Tuyen Bio asked in surprise, "Damn, aren't mummies zongzi? Are those worth money too?" Wang replied, "Wrong. In our eyes, they are mummies, but abroad they are treasures." According to prices in Beijing, anything from before the Ming dynasty uniformly fetches 20,000 yuan. Taken abroad, the price is 100,000 US. Don't you think, brother, that Westerners love to see such strange and bizarre things? In the eyes of Westerners, our ancient Eastern country is full of mystical colors. For example, at the New York Museum of Natural History, there's an advertisement. Today, an exhibition of mysterious Eastern beauty mummies. Isn't that shocking? This mummy craze originated from the mummy of the Lulin girl excavated from the Lulin Shaohei tomb complex. Even in our own country, if you just randomly set up an exhibition, crowds of people would line up to visit. That, brother, is called a money-making opportunity. Tuyen Bio and I immediately understood upon hearing this, nodding repeatedly. So the story had so many layers of reason. It was truly a case of a lamp needs kindling to illuminate, words need speaking to clarify. Moreover, knowing the two jade pieces were worth 50,000 yuan brought immense satisfaction. Pulling teeth from a tiger's mouth hadn't been in vain after all. I then asked, Mr. Jin, you said these burial objects of ours are called what? What jade? Why is the name so difficult? Wang poured my beer glass full. What's the rush? We have plenty of time today, just let me tell you slowly. This is called moth-bodied li, patterned twin li, jades. In our antique dealing business, there's a rule. Items without official names are uniformly named after their characteristics. Just like the famous Marquis Yi of Zung bells, which are classified as national treasures. In the past, that type of musical instrument wasn't called that, but what it was specifically called is now difficult to verify. So archaeologists named it based on the tomb it was excavated from and the type of instrument. Moth-bodied li, patterned twin li, jades. That name fully describes the characteristics of these two jade pieces. What is moth-bodied? Its shape resembles a moth. The jade piece was retrieved from a Jin dynasty general's tomb. In ancient times, the flying moth was a symbol of self-sacrificing warriors. Didn't they say, a moth flies into the fire? Going forth without return, knowing death awaits, yet still charging into the flames with resolve and ease. Of course, we now know these creatures can't see anything and just rush toward any light. But the ancients didn't see it that way. They deeply revered the spirit of the moth, taking its form to create some pieces of jewelry for those who achieved brilliant military merits to wear as a source of pride. You too, look at the pattern on this jade piece again. It also has a name called Li, pattern. Its head resembles a lion, its body resembles a tiger, but in truth it's neither. A Li is a type of dragon with no horns on its head. Items carved with a Li have the effect of warding off evil. Not long ago, in Mojin Mountain in Yunnan, a Ming dynasty princely tomb was excavated. I'm sure you too have heard of legends of great Ming heroes from Pingshu, right? Zhu Yanzhong had a great general named Mu Ying. The tomb excavated then was precisely that of Prince Mu. An emerald twin Li, jade was also found in that tomb, which looks similar to the two jade pieces you two retrieved. In modern terms, it's a type of medal, a military merit award or something. Let's continue to the word twin. As the name makes clear, it means a pair. This is very important here. This type of ornament hung on both sides of a helmet, so it absolutely had to be a pair. If there was only one piece, it wouldn't be worth anything. And why is it called Li? That refers to the technology used to create them. Furthermore, the value of these two jade pieces primarily lies in their historical and aesthetic value, rather than the preciousness of their material. The raw material is Qianwang color, changing tile stone from the Caucasus region. It's not actually jade, though if you insist on classifying it as jade, it wouldn't be entirely wrong. This type of Qianwang tile stone is very valuable now, but these two pieces are not top grade. The top grade ones change into 12 different colors over 24 hours. There are also characters on it, seal script. It's a name, Guo Hamo. It seems he was the owner of this pair of jade pieces. This person was apparently a left capital supervisor grand marshal from the late Jin dynasty. While defending a city, he used only one bow to shoot dead over 200 Mongol soldiers and generals. He was extraordinarily brave and ultimately died fighting on the battlefield. He can also be considered a hero. Legend has it that the Jin emperor had to use 100,000 taels of gold to retrieve his body from the Mongols. I felt like I was listening to Pingshu. I understood some parts but not much. Tuyen Bio, however, didn't bother listening anymore. He kept adding plates of tripe, lamb, chicken, vegetables, and mushrooms into the hot pot. Recently, we had been eating only roasted meat, so we were tired of it. Now, having sliced lamb hot pot felt wonderful to chew, so he just kept eating. I asked Wang what items were hot on the market recently, selling for a lot of money. Wang replied, Westerners call our country China, meaning porcelain. It can be said that ceramics will always be the hottest items on the antique market. The types of ceramics produced during the most glorious periods in Chinese history are difficult to rival, even with today's advanced technology. For example, have you heard of Chenghua porcelain, brother? Especially the colored porcelain, it's incredibly expensive. It doesn't need to be grand, just a tiny piece like a 3-year-old's private part brought to Panjiayuan would still fetch 100,000 yuan, no bargaining needed. You just said that there were many ceramics in the ancient tomb at Hak Fong Pass on the Sino-Mongolian border. It's a pity you didn't retrieve them. Those things were probably all from the late Northern Song dynasty. What a great shame. I'll say something unpleasant, and I hope you won't be offended, but you two were truly blind this time. Those vases and basins you two didn't retrieve were worth much more than these 2 jade pieces. That's why I say your eyes still need a lot of training. Wait for an opportunity. Next time, when I go back to my hometown to pack some things, you two come with me for a while to learn the trade secrets. In subsequent trips, you should earn at least several million yuan. I nodded and assented, then told Vang, I have the same idea. Now, I have a somewhat bold idea. Next time, the 2 of us plan to raid a bigger tomb and solve the problem in one go. This profession of digging mountains for gold, operating in deep forests and remote mountains, is not as good as in the interior. The risks are too great. Even if we had a few more lives, we couldn't endure such torment. I'm preparing to find a large tomb with top-notch Feng Shui to operate on. However, this is not child's play. We must first prepare thoroughly, otherwise I'm afraid we won't be able to cope. Vang asked, "And Nyat, do you really want to go big? Have you chosen a target yet?" I replied, "No, I just suddenly got the idea. Large tombs in such remote areas are extremely hard to find. Besides, right now I'm like a peasant. Other than knowing how to read Feng Shui to find tombs, when it comes to history, archaeology, value, appraisal, my head is as dark as a pot. I understand nothing. My target selection is also completely clueless. I don't want to act hastily either. The last operation proved to be a bit driven by immediate profit. From now on, we can't do such rush jobs. However, having said that, although this trip to the northeast didn't yield much, we did accumulate some experience and capital. Consider it a tomb raiding drill." Vang replied, "Hearing you say that, I suddenly remembered something. In Xinjiang, you see, quote,